Welcome to the Make You Famous podcast, where host Jeffrey Goldsmith talks with guests about fame and how to achieve it.
I'm your host, Jeffrey Goldsmith, and check out the book at makeyoufamous.co.
Welcome, Martin Webb. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Jeff.
Okay, so we met through this site called Viamigo that I started years ago, and you randomly signed up for it. And then I've watched your career over the years. You were the head of marketing for Marc Jacobs for a while in Japan, and you've done all these other interesting fashion marketing jobs. And now you have an agency called Communion with some great clients. Tell us about those clients and what you're doing right now.
Right, so Communion was founded in March 2014. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as you mentioned previous to that, I've been working for Marc Jacobs. I wanted to create an agency that, to use a marketing term, was through the line. So a combination of PR and advertising. I've been able to kind of do that for a few clients. I've been specializing in the luxury field. One of the big clients I had in the beginning was Cartier, and now we're working with Ferrari also. Obviously, I come from a fashion background, so we're dealing with a lot of fashion clients too, occasionally jewelry, cosmetics, footwear, eyewear, and other categories like that.
Right, and it's all in Tokyo, right?
That's correct, yeah. I mean, I've been based here in Tokyo for 17 years now.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah. But you're not Japanese, obviously.
That's correct, yes. I'm from the UK. Turning Japanese on the inside anyway.
Yeah, I've lived there as well, I lived there twice. But tell me, I mean, the reason I was interested in talking to you, first of all, I'm coming back to Japan. I'm going to do an event around the book in November. And I wondered, I want to focus on Japan a little bit because it's got its own, every culture has its own vibe. There's a certain sort of, I wanted to ask you about the difference. Like, what is it to market things in Japan? What makes things take off in Japan that might be different from other places? What do you think?
Great question. I think one should probably start by considering the fact that Japan is a very Asian-minded nation in the sense that it's very kind of collective. As a society. So in the UK and the West, we're very individualistic, obviously, and here, I know this is a cliche, but just to kind of frame what I'm about to say, Japanese people make their choices about products, about brands, and also, you know, experiences and other social things on the basis of what their peers will think of them if they purchase it or do it. Westerners tend to be a lot more self-centered, if you like. They're thinking about themselves and what this purchase is going to do for their personal feelings or circumstances or whatever. The Japanese always are thinking about others and others' perceptions of themselves before making these decisions, which is a big factor. So we can see, obviously, you know, the purchase journey or the purchase funnel being quite similar across, you know, whatever market, but this kind of stage in that process, which is related to a confirmation of security. It's when Japanese people are considering brands, they're thinking about the level of authority, the level of credibility, also longevity, trust, what kind of message a brand sends out to the market. So they prefer usually brands that are conservative, brands that are recognized, brands that are stable. They don't like to be thinking of themselves investing, especially when it comes to more expensive purchases, these high ticket items. Right. Rather than going for an upcoming faddish brand, they're far more attracted to brands that have a long history, ones with a heritage, ones that kind of prove their commitment to the market by an impressive physical presence, so flagship stores in the right parts of town, which of course are very, very expensive to maintain, so they can prove that the brand is successful and profitable and so on and so forth. So I'd say that this is a part of the purchase journey that is not as important to foreigners, but is very important here in Japan.
So if you're trying to enter the Japanese market, I'm thinking of, like, I know that Dandelion Chocolate is there now from San Francisco, and the folks from New People. I don't know if you know what New People is. It's sort of a little Japanese mall of interesting stuff in Japantown in San Francisco. They're bringing Dandelion Chocolate to, and I have no idea how they're doing. I assume well. Another friend brought a skateboard line called FTC from Haight Street in San Francisco to Japan. He franchised it, and that seems to be doing well. These are very niche markets, though. How do you get the word out in Japan? Is it? I know, I do marketing in the U.S. It's a combination of PR, it's advertising, it's all these things. I'm just so considering what you're saying, how would a newcomer establish themselves in Japan if you're an up-and-coming hat designer or something like that?
Okay, so I guess this would probably relate to the topic that I've been thinking about over the past 48 hours as I've been considering what it is I should say to you.
Oh no, we're going to talk. What am I going to say?
Because I think one of the most interesting things about Japan, which, I mean, obviously this is also related to the structure of what we're talking about overseas too. But yes, it's kind of, sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought for a second here, Jeff.
Happens to me every day.
Yes, I mean, launching a brand here can be, well, it's very tricky because there are certain protocols, there are processes, and there are gatekeepers.
Right.
And as you know, any market is, it has a kind of finite history, if you like. So in the PR business, it didn't really start until the 60s, or 70s. So it's not like we're in the business of agriculture, which has been around for thousands of years. We're dealing with an industry that's constantly evolving. There are embedded players. And it's the same, of course, for television, movies, other media, newspapers, and so on and so forth. So some, newspapers have been around a lot longer than radio, which has been longer, than the internet, and so on and so forth. But all of these media businesses, and in fact any business when it comes to hats, for example, there are well-established hat brands and others, so on and so forth. So these kind of historical legacy structures and the kind of protocols and the industry guardians who surround them exist in every single industry in the world. It's especially important in high interest categories such as fashion, such as luxury goods, whereas the Anna Winters of the world are literally, gatekeepers to potentially billions of dollars of revenue.
She's the editor of Vogue, right?
She's the editor-in-chief of Vogue US, yes. So similarly, the editor-in-chief of Vogue Japan does have an influence over the market here. And if you want your hat brand to be successful, then you must speak to the right people in the right order, in the right way, usually using the right kind of proxy, which would be, an established and reputable PR agent such as myself. Obviously, there are other people doing similar sort of thing to me in the market, but so one would have to do the right things in the right order, in the right way, and so once one has done that and jumped through those hoops and put one's money where one's mouth is, you're looking at what's the world's third largest economy. It's less disparate than China, so you can gain more traction in a short space of time. And the Japanese actually have a saying. They call themselves Ichiokunin, which means 100 million people. So there's which is the approximate population. Is actually more like 130 these days. But historically, you know, this mythical 100 million implies that it's a sort of collective mind, like an ant hive, you know, if you like.
Right.
So
Like that number is a unit.
yes, exactly. Yes,
Exactly.
that is, yeah, somehow whole. But this kind of collective mindset does allow you to get huge traction if you find success with a certain product, and this kind of relates back to the fame thing, because of course there are different levels of fame. There's also word of mouth fame,
Right.
which I suppose, you know, many centuries ago would have been the original fame, when people can talk about you from village to village. But
Well, that's the truth. The fame used to be sort of your reputation. That's the original meaning of the word.
yeah,
Now it's become something else.
I'm into Austrian economics, and you know, reputation is a very, very crucial part of you know, building a free society. And I think with the artificial media manipulated fame that we have these days, we forget about our reputations in the local market. But as someone who trades on the basis of his reputation, if I don't do a good job for client A, then, you know, it's a small world, and the CEO of client A is going to mention to client B that, you know, communion didn't do this or that. And so it's very important for all of us to maintain our reputations in our local markets, and or just environments. It doesn't needn't even be in a business context.
No, a Zen priest once said to me, wholesome actions lead to wholesome outcomes.
Very interesting. You know, it's odd to hear that from a Zen priest, because they don't actually take any action, do they? They just sit in a cave, or, you know, staring at the wall. I always wonder
He was
how.
telling me that. I took his advice, actually.
Yeah, so I would say it is far more difficult to make something a viral success in Japan than anywhere else. I'd say there are very high barriers to entry for new brands coming into Japan, and that's deliberately so.
Right, because the distribution system in Japan has many layers, many middlemen, all structured to create a conservative, stable society.
That's correct, yes. So if you're able to go through the hell of getting the license and finding a distributor and kissing their butt long enough for them to give you a nice deal and drinking the sake and pan, and, you know.
How long do you have to kiss their butt for exactly? I'm kidding. But I get it. It's the dinners, and it's the drinking, and it's the, I've been intoxicated in Tokyo. I know. Lemon sour.
Yeah, lots of those, and get a deal. And of course, you know, if you play by the rules, it can be extremely rewarding.
Right, right. Okay, so that's super. You've reminded me. I remember, this was a long time ago when I lived there. Everything you say is true. So I'm a hat maker, and I'm in New York. I'm not. I'm in San Francisco, and I'm not a hat maker. But let's say I were, and I wanted to enter Japan with my hats, because I know, you know, I was in Japan last year. I went to a department store with my kids. We saw really cool hats. We saw really cool hats on men in the subway. Fashion in Japan is awesome now. How do I go about getting my hat from my desk to you to Isetan, or to some shop in Harajuku, where they're selling hats, with a men's store? This is a cool men's store in Nara, apparently. A friend of mine, I met him at the train station in Kyoto. We're in these cool hats. I'm like, where'd you get them? Nara. I'm like, you kidding? So the shops are out there. How do I get my hat from my desk to you to some of these shops? How do I do that?
Okay, so I would say the people who are bringing the most fashion conscious Japanese consumers merchandise from other parts of the world are very, very sophisticated people, and they're selected for that job because they have a refined taste. Okay. The way they get their information and stay one step ahead of the consumer, and that's their job, is to consume overseas media that regular Japanese consumers don't have access to.
Uh-huh.
So they will subscribe to foreign magazines, they will read all the foreign websites, they go to the trade shows and they check out the latest brands.
Okay.
And their job is just to research what's cool and new, what's hot, what's not, what cool people think are the hot brands right now, what's in, what's out, and so on and so forth.
They're scouts. Yeah.
They are scouts for
Yeah.
cool brands. So
Yes.
if your brand has some exposure in UK, French, US media, if you've got some cool people wearing it, if it's in the right stores, and of course all the buyers are competitive shopping other stores in New York, Paris, London. If you're on the racks there, or I suppose it could be a hat stand because we're talking hats, but if you're being sold, then the Japanese buyers will notice that, and then if you're serious, you have an agent, hopefully in Paris. If it's men's, it could also be in Florence or Milan, and Japanese buyers will just come to you and they will compete, and you'll get an account. You don't actually have to make an effort to come to Japan. They will come to you if you're cool outside. Now, if you've been doing your hat brand for like 3 or 4 years, and you've been in some overseas media a little bit, and no Japanese person has come to you, that's because it's not suited to the Japanese market, so forget it.
Whoa. Just forget it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or talk to a Japanese person about how could I make my hats more palatable to the Japanese market. Or when you meet a Japanese buyer at your fair, say, hey, really want to be in Japan. What should I do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But obviously there are things that just don't work here because of numerous foibles or, just minor reasons. But
I just as an aside, I had and I don't have this business anymore, but I had a business called Object Fetish for a while, and we sold really cool jewelry. And I sent images off to a bunch of magazines, and I got it in Vogue. I got our website list in Vogue at least half a dozen times over the course of a year, because I just sent them really cool images, and they're always looking. People don't know this. If you're out there making cool hats and they're really interesting, and you send the images off, and the hats are on the heads of cool looking people and the photographs are cool, you're going to get them in magazines. And so if that's inhibiting you, oh my God, no one's ever going to publish this in my hat. Don't stop yourself. Don't edit yourself. Actually take the step to send it off to Anna Wintour's magazine, Vogue, and you might get it in it. And then the Japanese buyers will notice it. The fame, reputation we talked about a little earlier that mechanism will take hold, and they'll consider it for the Japanese market. Yeah. We've now given people the formula.
Yeah, it ain't rocket science.
No, it's not. It's mechanical in a way. I mean, you do have to have a good product.
Yeah.
So, but you said, I interrupted you because you were going to say something about, how the mind wanders. Say something about things don't work. Some things don't work.
Yes, it's just an aesthetic thing. There are some, types of design that don't resonate with Japanese people because they're too bright or bold, or the shapes don't work, or just other, little practical reasons.
Yeah, okay. Right, exactly.
One thing I did want to talk about, Jeff, just to change direction in the conversation here, is the difference between the talent industry in the States and Japan, which I think affects how things are done here to a large extent. Over in the Europe and the UK, the actor or actress hires an agent to manage their schedule and do all their stuff, and then they get paid a percentage fee of the revenue of the actor or actress, right? So Tom Cruise is, he has a contract with CAA, and they obviously, after paying the team, take a percentage. So
that's Creative Artists Agency. Have you ever been to that building?
I have not.
Oh my God, I have. And you get like a valet comes out and they bring you up in the elevator and they bring you to the office. It's wonderful. it's odd. I admire it and I find it uncanny.
Sounds very intimidating. Maybe I'll make it one day.
I'm sure we could figure out a reason for you to make an appointment there. If you're coming to LA, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll come with you.
Cool. Maybe I'll just look at it from the outside.
Anyway, you were saying, so in the US, the star pays the agent a percentage.
Correct. And in Japan, it's the other way around, because the star is actually a salaried employee of the agency.
Like Horipro.
Yeah, like Horipro, like Oscar, there are many others, but the agency essentially takes on the talent as a salaried employee, so they get a monthly salary. And then if they score other jobs, that they take a percentage, which is much, much bigger than the percentage that American agencies would take. Mm-hmm. And the talents are essentially bound by some very strict rules, and they're managed very carefully by their managers, who then in turn offer them protection. Right. And yes, it is sinister like it sounds, and they do have a lot of power over the media, i.e., if you publish a paparazzi picture of, or if you take a paparazzi picture of XXX actress, then someone will come around and have a word. So this strange system that Japan has, where its criminals are all registered with the government, all Yakuza guys have, they're all signed up, and the government just kind of turns a blind eye to that, or whatever. It's very complicated, but they're obviously involved in the entertainment industry too. Right. Can be a bit, on the shady side sometimes, and it's one of those sort of taboo, unspoken things. Everyone knows that those people are the ones who are owning the talent who's on your TV. So another big difference between Japanese entertainment and that in Europe and the States is that you will never ever see a non-pro person on TV. So we have in the West game shows where Joe Blogs from down the street will come along and answer questions about trivia and culture and so on and so forth.
A guy in my neighborhood was on the show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Right. Yeah. So that will never ever happen in Japan. You will never see anyone who isn't signed up with one of these talent agencies and is on a salary on TV, because you can't just have amateurs on there. Who's going to get paid? So that's another big difference. Obviously, the scale of the whole thing is much smaller because there isn't such a big market for Japanese culture outside of Japan like there is in the States, where you can syndicate all over the world and so on and so forth. So it's slightly different. So talents have to rely on not these big ticket movies, but on TV commercials, on other types of commercials, and spreading their wings kind of thin.
But
metaphors there.
It's domestic. It's a domestic market. So it really is. It's a market of 100 million of the 100 million people you mentioned before, not 7 billion people as it is for stuff coming out of the US.
Yeah, but then remember that we don't have these kind of segmented markets. In my inbox, I'm forever getting marketing to the Hispanic audience, marketing to African Americans, marketing to whatever. But there is no, there aren't any African Japanese or Hispanic Japanese. It's just Japanese. So again, that's something to bear in mind. As I said, also, in China, you've got different lingual groups, and so on and so forth. So as a one unified market that's easy to. So let's say you were a hat designer. So I'm sorry to skipping now, but
no, we're bringing up the old metaphor. It's great.
Yeah, and you did want to come to Japan, and you weren't just going to sit back and wait for the, let's say those gatekeepers, and you wanted to do something. I think, just coming here and pressing the flesh with people, reaching out to someone on the ground, somehow everyone's got some connection to somebody in Japan, right? So people like Paul Smith, the UK designer Vivienne Westwood also.
Mm-hmm.
They were successful here because they pressed the flesh. They came out here. It was right when they started, it was a much more difficult journey to make.
Wow.
They came over here regularly every year, and ate and drank with the people, and managed to build themselves enormous businesses as a result. Paul Smith, 90% of his sales is in Japan. Vivienne Westwood, it's over 80% in Japan.
Yeah, I own some Paul Smith. This is a Dries Van Noten. It's not.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, thank you very much. Fits well. I have a friend named Tunji Dada in New York. I should introduce him to you.
Mm.
He is a fashion designer, and he has sold in Japan and at Barney's New York and so forth and so on. And I promised him that I would have a conversation like this with him at one point. Now I feel I must.
Do it. Yes.
Yeah. Because he creates amazing stuff. And it's true that the gatekeepers in Japan are an issue, but he's so personable. I could see him go to Japan with his stuff, doing a fashion show, and boom, something happening. Just because he's so interesting. I'm sure Paul Smith pulled off that kind of thing too.
Mm.
Because his stuff is just so great. I own these pair of pants. It's you can't tell whether it's blue or purple. It's just on the blue side of purple enough, so they're not purple pants. I know that cup, I think.
Pinoy.
Exactly. Well, this has been very interesting, Martin. So I'll keep you updated about the event that's coming up.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's sort of an experiment. Can I make my book famous in Japan just by trying?
Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, who
I'll
knows?
lend you a hand.
Yeah, why not? It's really nice to finally meet you after all these years.
Yeah, likewise. It's been too long. I'm finally, glad we finally got to do it.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to check out the book at makeyoufamous.co.